Phoenix, Arizona. 1.6 million people, endless blue skies, stunning desert sunsets. On the surface, it looks like one of the most livable cities in America. But there are streets in Phoenix where the sunshine doesn't reach. Streets where the neighbors don't talk about what they've seen, where houses sit empty for years, not because nobody wants them, but because the people who moved in couldn't stay. Tonight, we are going to one of those streets. This is not folklore. This is not an urban legend passed around a campfire. This is a documented case with named witnesses, recorded evidence, and a paper trail that investigators have been quietly studying since 2019. 3 families moved into a single house in Phoenix, Arizona, over the course of 7 months. 3 families moved out, all of them reporting the same experiences, the same sounds, the same locations, the same overwhelming sense that something inside that house was fully aware of them. Welcome back to the Dread Files. Tonight, we go inside the house on Camelback Road, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you will never look at an empty house the same way again. Before we get into the testimonies, we need to understand where this house came from, because in every serious paranormal investigation, history is everything. The address is 4417 East Camelback Road, Phoenix, Arizona. The house itself was built in 1973 by a retired U.S. Army veteran named Harold Voss. Harold moved to Phoenix with his wife Dorothy after spending 30 years in the military. By all accounts, they were quiet, ordinary people, kept to themselves, maintained their yard, waved at the neighbors, completely unremarkable, until 1987. In the early hours of March 14th, 1987, Dorothy Voss suffered a massive cardiac arrest. She was 61 years old. Harold found her collapsed in the hallway, the narrow hallway that connected their bedroom to the bathroom, somewhere between midnight and 1 a.m. Dorothy was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, I want you to remember that hallway, because every single family that moves into this house after 1987 will have an experience centered on that exact hallway. Harold Voss never remarried. He stayed in the house alone for the next 11 years. Neighbors describe a man who retreated completely from the world after losing Dorothy. He stopped coming outside. He stopped acknowledging people. Windows stayed dark. The yard, which Dorothy had always kept immaculate, slowly died. And then, in 1998, Harold Voss was found dead inside the house. He had been dead for over 2 weeks before anyone noticed. The coroner ruled it as natural causes. Harold was 79. His body was discovered by a mail carrier who noticed the accumulation at the door. After Harold's death, the property changed hands several times. Most tenants left within a year, and the ones who stayed longer simply didn't talk about why they left. But here's the piece of history that a former police officer named Marcus Webb uncovered in 2019. And this is where things get genuinely unsettling. In 1962, 11 years before Harold Voss even broke ground on that property, there was already a structure on that land. A small, temporary workers' quarters used to house migrant laborers during a local construction project. In December of 1962, a man died inside that structure. He was a migrant worker, no next of kin on record, no official burial documentation. Investigators who later looked into this found a single line in a county record from January 1963, a notation about the removal of remains from the site. No name, no age, no origin. The structure was demolished. The land sat empty. Harold Voss purchased the plot in 1972 and built his family home on top of it the following year. And whatever that unnamed man left behind may have never left. Now we come to the heart of this case. Between January and August of 2019, 3 separate families moved into the house at 4417 East Camelback Road. None of them knew each other. None of them knew about the others' experiences until investigators connected them later that fall. And yet, the overlap in what they reported is extraordinary. Let's go through each one. David Mercer was 34 years old in January 2019. Software engineer. Originally from Chicago, he had relocated to Phoenix for a senior position at a tech company and needed a house fast. He found the property on Zillow. Good square footage, competitive price, quiet neighborhood. He signed the lease without visiting in person. David moved in with his wife Lisa and their 8-year-old daughter Emma. The first week was completely normal. Good neighbors, quiet street. Emma loved her new bedroom. David and Lisa settled in quickly. David told investigators, and I'm reading from his recorded statement here, he said, "It felt like home from day one. I remember thinking we got lucky with this place. That changed on the 8th night. Emma woke up screaming. David and Lisa ran to her room. They found Emma standing in the corner of her bedroom, facing the wall, her entire body shaking. When they turned her around, she wasn't crying. She was completely calm, and she said something that David describes as the most disturbing thing he has ever heard from another human being. Emma looked at her parents and said, "The old woman told me not to scream. She said it would wake him up." Emma Mercer was 8 years old. She had never been to Phoenix before January 2019. She had no knowledge of Dorothy Voss. She had no knowledge of Harold. She had no knowledge of the man who died on that land in 1962. She knew none of it. And yet, from that night forward, the activity in the house escalated steadily. David describes waking up at exactly 3:17 a.m. every single night to the sound of footsteps in the hallway outside the master bedroom. Not random, not occasional. Every single night, 3:17 a.m. He would get up. He would check the hallway. He would find nothing. He would go back to bed. And the following night, at 3:17 a.m., footsteps again. After 6 weeks of this, David set up a camera in the hallway. He shared the footage with a paranormal researcher in the Phoenix area. I cannot show you that footage here, but the researcher who reviewed it submitted a written assessment describing what he called an anomalous disruption in the visual field, consistent with cases of residual haunting, a pattern of energy rather than an entity replaying a loop. The Mercer family vacated the property in February 2019. David left so quickly that he did not take all of his furniture. He left a couch, a bookshelf, and Emma's bed frame behind. He told investigators, "There is nothing in that house worth going back for." The second family arrived in March 2019, just weeks after the Mercers vacated. Sarah Okafor was a registered nurse, 5 years at a Phoenix area hospital, originally from Lagos, Nigeria. She was practical, methodical. She worked night shifts in an emergency room. She had seen things that would break most people. She moved into the house at Camelback Road with her teenage son, James, 16. Sarah told investigators very clearly at the start of her statement, "I do not believe in the supernatural. I believe in biology, chemistry, and physics. I believe in what can be measured." She lasted 43 days in that house. Sarah's experiences were different from the Mercer family's in almost every way, except for the location. Her disturbances didn't center on the hallway at night. They centered on the kitchen. Between 2 and 4 a.m. always. The experience Sarah kept returning to, in multiple interviews, always described the same way, was a smell. She describes it as old perfume, like something her grandmother might have worn, mixed underneath with something organic, something decomposing. It would appear suddenly in the kitchen at full intensity with no gradual build, and it would vanish just as suddenly, leaving no trace. Sarah assumed it was a plumbing issue. She called a plumber. The plumber inspected every drain, every pipe, every connection under the house. He found nothing. She called him back a second time, 3 weeks later. Again, nothing. The smell continued. But what finally made Sarah Okafor, a woman who runs toward emergencies for a living, pack her bags and walk out of that house, was her son. One morning, Sarah came into the kitchen at 5 a.m. after her night shift. James was already there. He was fully dressed in his school clothes 4 hours before school started. His backpack was on the table. He was sitting perfectly still, looking at the wall. Sarah asked him what he was doing. James looked at her and said, very calmly, "Mom, we have to leave today. The man downstairs told me last night that if we don't go, something bad is going to happen. The house at 4417 East Camelback Road is a single-story property. There is no downstairs." Sarah Okafor packed her essential belongings that same day. She was out of the house by evening. She told investigators, "I am a nurse. I have held people's hands while they died. I am not someone who frightens easily. But my son said those words, and I did not ask a single follow-up question. I just started packing." The third and final family moved in during June 2019. Marcus Webb, former Phoenix Police Department, 11 years on the force, retired at 38 due to a knee injury. Arizona native, born and raised. He moved into the house with his wife Rachel and their 15-year-old daughter, Priya. Marcus knew the house had a reputation in the neighborhood by this point. He didn't care. He told the paranormal research team who later interviewed him, "I've dealt with real violence. I've been in situations where my life was genuinely at risk. I'm not going to be scared out of a house by stories." Marcus lasted 7 weeks. What Marcus experienced falls into 3 distinct categories, and he documented all of it, because as a former cop, documentation was second nature to him. First, the photographs. Every framed photograph in the house, family photos, artwork, anything hung on the walls, would be found face down the next morning. Every single one. Marcus and Rachel would hang them back up before bed. Wake up, face down, every time. He tested it. He marked the backs of the frames with a pen to confirm they were the same. Frames in the same positions. He set up a motion-activated camera pointed at one wall. The camera captured nothing, no movement, no disturbance, and yet the photograph on that wall was found face down the next morning. He has no explanation for this, none. Second, the hallway. Again, the hallway. Marcus describes waking up one night to a sound coming from the hallway outside his bedroom. He's a former police officer. His instinct is to move toward the sound, not away from it. He got out of bed. He approached the hallway. And he stopped. He could not move. Marcus Webb, trained law enforcement, physically fit, a man who by his own description does not freeze, stood at the entrance to that hallway and was completely paralyzed for what he estimates was 4 to 5 minutes. He heard something in that hallway. He has never told investigators what he heard. He has never told journalists. He has never told friends. He told one person, his wife, Rachel. And Rachel, interviewed separately, said only this: "I believe everything he told me, and I am deeply grateful that I was asleep." Third, and this is the detail that the paranormal research team found most significant. Marcus, using his law enforcement contacts, dug into the property records beyond what was publicly available. He found the 1962 county notation about the unnamed migrant worker who died on that land. But he also found something else. A handwritten note attached to the 1963 demolition record for the workers' structure, signed by the county supervisor at the time. The note was brief. It read, "Site cleared, remains removed to county facility, matter closed per instruction, do not refile." Marcus told investigators, in 11 years of law enforcement, do not refile means someone wanted something forgotten. Someone with authority made a decision that this person, this human being who died on that land, was not going to be documented, not going to be identified, not going to be given a proper burial. He was just erased. The Webb family moved out in August 2019. The house has been vacant since. In September 2019, a paranormal research team based in Scottsdale, Arizona, a group with over 15 years of field investigation experience, conducted a formal 3-night investigation of the property at 4417 East Camelback Road. Their findings were compiled into a report that has since been reviewed by independent researchers in the paranormal community across the United States and the United Kingdom. Here is what they documented. Finding 1. Electromagnetic field readings throughout the central hallway registered consistently 4 to 5 times higher than baseline readings taken in every other room in the house. Elevated EMF concentration in a specific location without an identifiable electrical source is one of the most consistently documented markers in serious paranormal investigation. It has been recorded in hundreds of cases across the US, Canada, and the UK. The hallway again. Finding 2. Thermal imaging cameras captured what the team classified as cold spot anomalies, localized drops in temperature of 8 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit, occurring in the hallway and in the kitchen, the same 2 locations. The same 2 rooms where 3 separate families who never spoke to each other reported their most intense experiences. Finding 3. On the second night of the investigation, audio recording equipment captured what the team classified as a Class B EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. A Class B EVP is an audio anomaly that is audible but subject to interpretation, meaning different listeners may hear different things. When the audio was cleaned, filtered, and enhanced, it contained what appears to be a human voice. The 6-member research team listened to the recording individually without discussing it with each other first. 2 members heard a name. They could not agree on what name. 2 members heard the words, "Get out." The lead researcher, Dr. Anita Farrow, 22 years in paranormal field research, listened to the recording 3 times. She refused to state publicly what she heard. In the team's official report, Dr. Farrow wrote only, "The audio anomaly captured on night 2 is the most significant piece of evidence collected during this investigation. I am choosing not to characterize its content in this report, as doing so would be irresponsible without corroborating evidence. What I will say is that it is not consistent with ambient noise, equipment interference, or any known environmental audio artifact. It is, in my professional assessment, genuinely unexplained." The team's final conclusion. The property at 4417 East Camelback Road, Phoenix, Arizona, demonstrates multiple converging indicators of active paranormal presence. The consistency of witness testimony across 3 independent families, the hallway, the 3 a.m. time frame, the children's experiences combined with the physical measurements obtained during our investigation, places this case among the most compelling we have documented in 15 years of fieldwork. We do not recommend human habitation of this property at this time. The house at 4417 East Camelback Road is still standing. It is still empty, and whatever is inside it is still waiting. I want to hear from you. Do you believe this is a residual haunting? The energy of Dorothy Voss replaying her final moments in that hallway? Do you believe it's something older, the unnamed man who died on that land in 1962 and was deliberately erased from record? Or do you think there's a rational explanation that investigators have missed? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read all of them. And if you're watching from the US, the UK, Canada, or Australia, I want to know, does your city have a street like Camelback Road? A house that people move out of too quickly? A place with a history that nobody talks about? Tell me in the comments, because your next Horror Files episode might be closer to home than you think. Subscribe if you haven't already. And tonight, when you walk down your hallway in the dark, try not to think about this. Thank you for today. Bye-bye.